Welcome to a football show, Thursday edition, Masters edition of the program, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. I am Braden Gall. That is Nick Suss of the Tennessee and Pay for Good Journalism. Nick, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Are you a Masters guy?
Not particularly. I'm not anti-Masters. I just don't watch it. It's not a part of my weekly, monthly, yearly routine.
Co-leader Joaquin Neiman right now at 3 under through 4, just giving you guys a live update on the show at the start of the show. Trevor, hello. Good to see you. If you want to get into the comment section, please jump into the comment section. Here's what we're going to do today, because I am legitimately tired of talking about Cam Ward. We're going to do something totally different. And it's not that he's not important. It's not that it's not fun. I need a break. So I will ask you a couple of quick questions based on some really great stories that you wrote about the comparison to Steve McNair, which Paul and I talked about on Monday. Whether or not that's fair or lazy or partway there, which is always the truth, somewhere in the middle. You wrote an interesting story about what made C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels successful, and we'll touch on that as it pertains to Cam Ward. I've got a question about wide receiver aggressiveness in the draft, a story from a little note from Tehran and Matt Miller of ESPN, and you had a chance to talk to Taylor Zarzer. So we're going to do a couple of quick news and notes on the front end, but the majority of the show today is going to be focused on what it actually will take for this Tennessee Titans football team to be good next year and contend for whatever you want to say. AFC South, playoff spot, wild card, just whatever it is. Be better, be competitive, be a good football team, take a major step forward. Largely, that's about which players develop into the players that become stars, become contributing members, whether at the top of the roster, the middle of the roster, or the bottom of the roster, which names need to take big steps forward to make progress, to make this team better, which players are on their last chance. Unfortunately, I have a long list of them that are on their last chance, and then maybe which guys aren't even going to survive camp, that are going to regress and be out of this team and are not a part of the future of this roster. So sort of an anti-Cam Ward episode where we look at the actual football players on the team so far and sort of play out.
And before people get angry, anti does not mean Braden hates Cam Ward. We're not playing that game again. Anti just means we are not actively talking about him for the bulk of the show.
It's anti-Cam Ward topic is what it is. It's the topics. We've spent a lot of time on this, and some of that's because all of you guys want nothing but Cam Ward content fed into your algo. I get it.
Semantically, maybe we call it Cam Ward counter programming.
There we go. I like that. That's better. There we go. Eddie says, y'all are much more hopeful than me. Competing for 4 wins is what I'm looking for. I'm not saying that they're going to be good. We'll see. We'll see. Ed says he does. He thinks he's Baker 2.0. I think he's slightly better than Baker. I think so. As PK calls him, Still Billy, which is Jared Stillman on 1025, which is Paul's way of being hilarious. Stillman was very offended by the Baker Mayfield comparison, which is not what I'm saying he is. I'm saying the vast majority of number 1 overall picks don't turn into the guy everyone thinks they're going to be.
Correct.
And if you get better than Baker Mayfield, you're actually kind of hitting above the watermark. There is sort of what I'm getting at. And Baker Mayfield had 71% completion percentage, like 4,500 yards and almost 40 touchdowns last year. I'm sorry, that's pretty good. So anyway, all right. See, I'm already I'm getting sucked into the Cam vortex of content.
Award text.
Oh, okay. All right. Well done. We can workshop it.
It's a series.
We can workshop it. All right. So first of all, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue are your home for the draft party, the 3rd annual charity draft party on Thursday night, April 24th. We will go live. Stoney Keeley, JT, the Hot Read Podcast, and a football show live from the Sinkers Beverages headquarters in Wedgwood, Houston. Tickets are $30. All you can eat, all you can drink. It's going to be a great party because if they do pick first and they pick Cam Ward or anybody else, we're going to go live, have an instantaneous reaction, and then all of a sudden we're just going to hang out and have fun. And if we hang out and have fun after that, maybe, and I'll ask you this question, maybe the Titans trade back into the first round. We'll discuss a little bit later on in the show here in a few minutes, but that's possible. Otherwise, it's just going to be a good hang. All the money goes to the Our Kids Foundation to benefit sexually abused children in the area. It's a gold standard clinic that takes care of kids, and I don't know what other cause could be better than that. So we're going to raise some more money this year for them. So that's Thursday night. And then Saturday night, doors at 7. After all you reporters get done with your interviews and your filings and your scribings, we're going to have a whole cavalcade of 440 personalities available for a private Q&A. Again, catered by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages. There will be a bourbon tasting a 5-flight bourbon tasting while we get to ask Paul Karski, Nick Suss, JT, me. I've already the editor of the Nashville Banner might be there as well, and we might have some other Titans dignitaries show up too. So it's going to be a lot of fun. All of the money for proceeds. Anybody who was there last year, they had a great time, and it's going to be a lot of fun. All you can eat, all you can drink, draft coverage, 3rd annual charity party, benefiting our kids, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Tickets, the links are in the show notes on the YouTube page and the podcast app, and we will be posting on the socials soon, but I want to give all you loyal listeners a crack at this first before we distribute it out to the masses. And we'll see. There's a limited number of tickets. We can sell about 25 tickets on Thursday night. We can sell a little bit more on Saturday. So come on out. Ed said, can someone buy Braden a Ward jersey to wear? Here's the thing, Ed. I really don't wear jerseys of players' names of any sport. I have some Nashville SC kits that I like to wear. I have a Predator sweater. None of them have names on the backs of them. So
if we get you an Incarnate Word jersey, would you wear it just on obscurity?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wazoo would be obscure enough for me. I would take a Wazoo Ward jersey for sure.
So if you guys are looking to buy Braden a Cam Ward jersey, if it is from Columbia High School,
nope.
If it is from Incarnate Word,
nope. I'm a college guy.
Okay. Incarnate Word and Wazoo.
I'll give you either one.
Get him either of those. He will wear that. Miami,
100%.
A little too mainstream.
It's too blue bloody for me. Also, private institution, academia. I'm more of a state
Word,
school.
Is Incarnate
I'm a
Word?
state school guy.
I would imagine Incarnate Word's a private institution.
See, this is also why I like the Wazoo kit better. I like public schools, man. I'm a public school kid. No, my one of my coworkers, shout out to Stephen Lassen, who's been my coworker for almost 20 years at Athlon, has a Dan Lefevre jersey.
I love that.
If you can tell me what team Dan Lefevre played on.
Central Michigan.
You want a good Titan story for Dan Lefevre?
Of course.
Why am I drawing a blank on the name of the corner they signed? Sean Murphy Bunting.
Yeah.
Really great quote. Really smart guy. His first or second week at training camp a couple years ago, I started talking with him. He played at Central Michigan. And I said he was like 5 or 6 or 7 years after this fantastic super quarterback named Dan Lefevre, who was #1 fantasy player in college football for like 3 years. Like insane production.
Spectacular.
Running the ball, throwing the ball, just all over the place. I think he was there with Antonio Brown, I think, but I might not be sure.
And we're talking about an era where it was the era of super quarterbacks in college football. Like this is when Tebow and Colt McCoy and Luck and all these guys were playing college football.
Yeah, this is 07, 08. So Murphy Bunting was not there, but I asked him, I said, man, is like Dan Lefevre like this cult hero in like Mount Pleasant, which is the city in Michigan and just the fact that I know that it's Mount Pleasant, he was already like, oh, this guy's cool. All right, let's talk. And I was like, how big of a deal is Lefevre in Mount Pleasant? He was like, dude, I don't even know if it's legal or not, but he would come to spring practice and throw with us like every week. And he was throwing at the corners and he was throwing with the receivers. And I'm like, I don't know if that's legal. I'm not sure, but it sounds fun. So he's a cult hero status. And I was like, Sean, is that allowed? And he was like, I really don't know, Braden. Like, I don't know if that's allowed or not. So, but Dan Lefevre, cult hero to NFL players and college nerds alike in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. There's your stupid college football nugget of the week. The geek
Cat.
Is that Geek Corner?
You want to call it Geek Corner? I'll give it to you. Kat does not approve of this dilly-dallying, though. She wants us to get to the show. That's what the screen is for.
Get to content. Eddie says, same, Braden. I'm a fan of teams, not players, shirts and hoodies with team logos. Very few players I care about once they leave my teams. Look, I have a Ray Nitschke jersey because it's cool. Okay. I just think a Ray Nitschke jersey is cool. And I had jerseys growing up as kids. Jerry Rice, Brett Favre, I had them. But like, I had a Penny Hardaway jersey.
I think the only jersey in my closet right now is a Jock Peterson Dodgers jersey.
Interesting choice.
My favorite active athlete, Jock Peterson. If we have a dull summer show and you just want me to talk for 20 minutes about why I think it's so cool that he is an athlete.
I have the cream Tennessee Volunteers baseball jersey, but nothing on the back. I don't want anything on the back. And it's cheaper, frankly. I have a U.S. men's national team jersey, nothing on the back.
If I want to dig it up somewhere deep in storage, I might have a Michael Griffin jersey.
Texas or Titans?
Yeah, like an old, I don't remember why I have it, but I might have an old Michael Griffin Titans jersey.
Okay. Austin asked an interesting question. So we'll start here. We'll get to content. Go buy tickets to the charity draft event, please. Austin says, haven't watched every stream, which is a you problem, Austin. Come on, man. Fix that. But have you talked about the severity, if you think there is, of not having a third round pick? That leads us into one of these questions about wide receiver aggressiveness. Matt Miller, Tron Davenport on ESPN said, expect the Titans to be aggressive at adding a receiver. And we're going to get to this also, but one of my last chance questions is who is going to be the number 2 offensive weapon outside of Pollard and Ridley? Who is going to step up into that role? That's a question. A lot of guys on their last opportunity to prove that. So, Austin, we'll kind of shoehorn these questions together, which is because not having the third certainly affects your ability to, if Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden are there at 28, at 30, if you need to go up a couple of spots, to give up a fourth or a third makes it a lot easier to go up and get that receiver if the Titans are in fact going to be aggressive, which I think makes total sense. So 2 questions all in kind of in one there, Nick.
I don't think that the reports are inaccurate. I just think that if the Titans are aggressive moving up in any capacity this draft, they have opened themselves up to be called hypocrites. Like, let's just be honest. They have spent the last 3 months talking about austerity and patience and all of these things that riled everybody up of, oh, they're not going to try. Oh, they're tanking. Oh, this, that. And then they go out and they don't do it. And sure, that's a positive. People are going to be like, yeah, you did it. But like, this is the same move that got the Titans in the position they are right now of not having a third round pick. You trade up to get Will Levis. You trade to get L'Jarius Sneed. Yeah. That's why you keep missing draft picks. That's why you're lacking in depth. And so if the way to be aggressive to get a receiver is to trade back and pick 2 second-round receivers or pick a second and a third-round receiver and double up on top 100 talents there, that to me makes sense. But if the idea is we absolutely have to give up a third-round pick in order to get Luther Burden, in order to get Emeka Egbuka at 28 instead of 35, it just to me reads like people who have a plan and say they have a plan and sold the fan base on the plan, and the entire fan base accepted the plan, and then they said, okay, extenuating circumstances, it doesn't apply this time. And then you're right back at the position that created the mess the Titans have been in for these 2 years specifically. It's not like they were trading up at the end of the John Robinson era, and that's what created the lack of depth. Those were draft misses. But throughout the Carthon era, the things that created this lack of draft capital was moving up to get Levis, was trading a pick to get Nick Folk, was trading to get L'Jarius Sneed. Like, we can go through these things, and then there was the Dennis Daly trade, which gave up a draft pick a few years back. There was was it Ugo Amadi they gave up a draft pick for? These were like 60s. So, yeah. These weren't like premium picks. But like, this front office has posed itself as the alternative to that. And so I am not at all saying that it would be a bad decision to do this. I'm saying it would be a decision that immediately opens these guys up to being like, hey, you said you weren't going to do this. Why'd you do it?
Stoney added the Leroy Watson trade. Nicely done, Stoney. Thanks for keeping us fresh. Steve says, I'm telling y'all, Big Jeff is out of here. That's certainly a big way to add a draft cap piece of crap. Here's what I think they could do. The question is, can you get rid of 103 or 120 and move up a couple spots? Is that enough to go from 35 to 31 or, something in that range? Because here's what I would say. I agree with your point that it does feel like it's sort of antithetical to what they've been preaching all along. We're in a rebuild. We need to do the roster, all the stuff you said. I also understand those 2 players, in my personal opinion, are worth it. Emeka Egbuka is one of my favorite players in this draft since January.
Sure.
He is a total consummate professional who can run every route in the route tree and will be an absolute, dependable thing that this team has not had maybe ever in 25 years. I don't think, and I was listening to a few people talk about this, I don't think he makes it past Green Bay because I am of the belief that Green Bay is in love with Emeka Egbuka.
I don't think he makes it past Denver, if I'm being honest. But
I agree. He's a total Sean Payton player. I totally agree with you.
But let's just put on our time travel caps for a second and travel back to April of 2024, way back in the day. We're all sitting here saying L'Jarius Sneed's going to be the best cornerback in football, and the Titans absolutely stole him for a third-round pick, and it was totally justified in doing it, and everybody's energized and excited. When people trade up for things, the consensus is that's a good player. They did the right thing. Like, nobody's trading up into the first round to pick Sebastian Castro. Like, if that happens, we're all like, oh, you could have probably waited for that. But these are going to be people like.
Well, and I love Luther Burden. I think the fact that he could be available at 35 is stupid. It's a stupid thing. It's just a dumb thing.
Totally.
And so either of those two guys, if an efficient trade presents itself, I'm not going to hate on him, because I do think if you're Brian Callahan and you're looking to fix the offense and you say we're going quality, not quantity, because this draft isn't great and we think we're getting two blue chip players that immediately help each other on the offense, which is what I'm here to fix, I can understand the strategy on that. But here's the question, and this is the same question with Cam Ward, the same question trading back and getting 8 picks extra and, doing a roster rebuild or a retool instead. What's interesting about this is if you tell me if you trade back to like 50 or 45 and you get an extra pick in the 60s or 70s, and you're telling me I can have a combination of Eric Ayumanor from Stanford, Jalen Knoll, Jack Besh, 2 of those guys versus 1 of Burden or Mecca, I still think I might take Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden. If you're telling me I could get one of those receivers and an edge rusher, I might start thinking about the edge rusher. At the same time, I am conflicted because I don't love Landon Jackson. Braden Swinson is fine. JTT seems like a solid player, but those aren't pieces I think are elite pieces you build an entire team around.
Sure, but we also have to.
I see all of it.
We have to think of the perspective with the edge rusher there. At that position, you are not drafting a number 1 edge rusher. You're drafting a number 2 edge rusher with the intention of picking up a number 1 next year. This is a multi-year rebuild. If you're not taking Abdul Carter, Michael Williams, that type of player in the first round, you have to view you're drafting JT Tuiomaloau to eventually be your number 2 edge rusher. And in that perspective, I think there's value there.
And then in the top 10 next year, you're taking an edge rusher almost telegraphed at that point.
Yeah.
So no, I don't disagree. It's tough. All right. So that's one piece of news there. And I think the question is valid about the 3rd round pick. So there you go. All right. You got a couple of stories about Cam Ward being compared to Steve McNair. Paul and I talked about it, and maybe I didn't articulate my feelings on this subject enough. At first I started seeing the Steve McNair comparison sort of float into the algo and into the fans thing. And certainly Graver doing a cool video about it is awesome. It works on the network. I get it. But like, it feels, I see those types of comparisons after the Titans get the first pick and after the Titans start to really hone in on him. And it feels very lazy. If you told me back in November that you see shades of Steve McNair in Cam Ward's game before the Titans became the first pick, then I'm on board with your comparison. And I think one of the guys you talked to, I think some of the guys you talked to were doing that. But I have not seen the Steve McNair comparison bubble to the surface, digitally at least, until the last couple of weeks. And that's, to me, a sign that people are going like, oh, this white slot receiver who's a little undersized and is a perfect route runner reminds me of Cooper Kupp, because the Rams have a pick and they're going to take take somebody that's like, it feels lazy after the Titans became the thing and honed in on Cam Ward because it's not a perfect comp. If you said it before, then I'm willing to give you credit and say, no, it's totally fair.
Yeah. So the 2 people I spoke to who have made the McNair comp, I spoke to Emery Hunt at CBS Sports, who has been making that comp since 2021. Like, you can find the tweets, you can find the videos. Cam Ward was still at Incarnate Word, and he was saying that. Got the receipts.
Good for him.
I also spoke to Phil Simms, Super Bowl quarterback, CBS analyst, etc., who started saying that around December. So it was not the Titans did not have the first pick yet, but it was in the ether. It was plausible. Started saying it when it looked like the Giants would have the number 1 pick, and Phil Simms had reason to talk about the Giants. So both of them had some interesting comparison points as to why Steve McNair comes to their mind when they watch Cam Ward. And very little of it was, oh, look at that body. Oh, look at the arm talent. Like that comes up of like, oh, dude can throw the ball really hard. The thing that Phil Simms told me that was really fascinating to me, he goes back to 1995, and Tom Coughlin was in his first year with the Jaguars. And Simms calls up Coughlin one day and says, hey, what you up to today? And Coughlin says, I'm working out this Steve McNair kid. I'll report back. So 2 or 3 days later, Coughlin calls Simms back and says, I got to tell you something. I do not like Steve McNair. I friggin' love Steve McNair. I am in love with this kid, in love with this prospect. And you want to know why? I worked him out for 90 minutes, and he was much better throwing in minute 85 than he was in minute 5. He gets stronger with time. He gets better with time. This is a dude that is a gamer who's going to go out and keep getting better throughout games. And that, from Phil Simms, is what he sees watching Cam Ward. He'll tell you, and Braden, I think you might actually agree with this, he said the best tape that he saw from Cam Ward this year was the loss to Syracuse.
It was a great game.
Go on and watch that game. Watch it not from a, oh, did he make the game-winning play perspective, this, that. Just watch it of how he handled himself in the moments to keep that game going. And he said the other best game he watched was the Louisville game with him and Shuck going back and forth, of just watching the way those two quarterbacks played against each other. And Miami just absolutely dominated that. I understand it from that perspective. If you're talking about the guy who plays his best on 3rd and long, guys who plays his best in the 4th quarter, guy who is a gamer. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I compared Cam Ward's last year of college stats to what Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud did in their last years of college based on efficiency metrics. And you guys can go read this at the Tennessean as well. The one thing that Cam Ward did on a points predicted per play average, EPA, whatever you want to call it, better or equal to Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud on a consistent basis, was how productive he was on guaranteed passing downs, 2nd and 8 or longer, 3rd and 4th and 5 or longer, those sort of things. His EPA was equal to Jaden Daniels, which we have to be honest, now that we have it in hindsight, Jaden Daniels might have played the best college football season of anybody not named Cam Newton or Joe Burrow ever. Like that, those might be the 3 best quarterback college seasons.
Second best season of the last 10 years in Baton Rouge.
Yes. 3rd best ever, 2nd best in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
But Cam Ward has those moments. And you talk to Emory Hunt, and he's like, look, man, I watched that spring season at Incarnate Word, and just watching the way he elevated a team that was okay, and it's mostly the same talent. And then you have these guys that are playing receiver next to him who are getting offers to transfer up to the P5 or who are getting invites to postseason all-star games and these sort of things. The way the rising tide raises all ships, or whatever that phrase is, that sort of thing is kind of what made the McNair comp raised to him. And then he talked to him more, and he was really impressed by the directness, how, like, genuinely, when you ask Cam Ward a question, he doesn't beat around the bush. He's like, I know the answer. I'm going to say the answer. Next question, please. And he thought that was pretty reminiscent of Steve. And so, like, these aren't just, oh, he's going to be wearing a Titans uniform. I guess he's got to either be Steve McNair or Marcus Mariota. Like, that's, these are slightly different perspectives.
Jake Locker has more of a Steve McNair play style than Cam Ward does.
And I wrote this in the story. If you look at the list of, like, if you Google Steve McNair NFL draft comparison, Dak Prescott got compared to Steve McNair a lot.
I agree with that.
Deshaun Kaiser got compared to Steve McNair a lot.
Nope.
Malik Willis got compared to Steve McNair a lot.
Dak Prescott has the barrel chest that Steve McNair had. You know, just like a big old barrel chest.
I make this point because I'm saying this isn't the first time anybody's ever been compared to Steve McNair. But I do think that if Cam Ward's fingers were like this much longer, I would see the comparison a little bit more.
So here's the thing, and I don't want to belabor this because, you know, we've already got comments. We did it last on Monday, but I don't think the running style is the same. I don't think the throwing style is the same. Funny thing about playing quarterback, those are probably the 2 most important physical tools, and I don't think they're the same.
I think they navigate the pocket similarly. I don't know if you guys talked about this, but yeah.
No, and there, and Paul said this, the start of the comp for those who are just now coming to it is there are some shades of these historic, memorable McNair plays that we have in our head that when Cam did some of those things at Miami, evading the pocket, extending the play, funny enough, ironically enough, I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in the NFL, Cam Ward, the way Steve McNair did, because their running style is different and because their throwing style is different. He should have a better chance to stay in the pocket and sling it because his release is much tighter and much quicker than Steve McNair's.
Yeah.
And so I think the demeanor and the attitude is very similar. I think his leadership style is very similar, even though the personalities are not exact. So I think there's some fair stuff there. I just wanted you to do it before. I just think it feels a little lazy if you came to this conclusion like last week and you're a Titans fan. That feels weird to me. If you did it and if you're not connected to the team and you did it in November because that's what you honestly saw, then I think it's a great and fair comparison. And all comparisons are imperfect by definition. So
sure, we spent an entire year saying Treylon Burks played like AJ Brown. Like comparisons are strange.
Well, he physically they yeah.
Yeah.
So one final note here before we get to some comments. My favorite part of the Syracuse Miami game, and I just double checked to make sure because I wanted to double check this. If Cam Ward could coach his coach to be a coach, the funniest thing about that game is they are down by a touchdown with 3.5 minutes to go inside the red zone. I think they're on the 10-yard line, and granted, 4th and 10 is not a high percentage play, but kicking a field goal is even dumber. And Mario Cristobal decided to kick a field goal in that game. Down by 7 with 3.5 minutes to go inside the 10-yard line. I don't understand what he was thinking.
The difference between being down 7 and being down 4 only protects you if they kick another field goal. That is truly the only thing you're protected from.
So you agree that it's one of the most mind-boggling, like, pull your hair out moments. Okay. A couple of comments. Let's get to some of these comments here quickly because I know a lot of you have chimed in. Z Dean says, I like Josiah Stewart. Could be a steal if he falls to the 4th round. I do think he's one of those names that you target.
I wrote this week. I think that in a perfect draft, he falls to you in the 4th.
103. I think he's a really good pick at that spot, especially if you take a receiver at 35 or trade back and get another receiver in there somewhere. Jason says they can't trade up for a non-quarterback, keep raising the floor with more picks. I think traditionally that's the right approach there. Ed says, personally, this is the complicated question here. This goes back to the Baker Mayfield line. Personally, I want more from Ward than McNair, and I loved McNair. But I would settle for McNair, but the bar is higher for me. And this, to me, is one of the more interesting elements of all of this. If you draft Cam Ward at 26 and he sits behind Levis for a year, we don't have any of this type of pressure. But you getting comped to the hero of the organization with the number 1 pick in the draft and then telling folks that he needs to be better than an MVP who took you to the Super Bowl is putting unfair pressure on a young player. And I get it. It's number 1 pick, and you got to be great. This is why I'm trying to say to folks, look at the history of the number 1 pick and the statistical probability that he is better than Steve McNair. I understand why folks want him to be better than that right away out of the box because McNair took a long time to get ready, and in today's game, you need to be ready faster, and I get that. But to suggest that you are expecting and need to have Cam Ward to be significantly better than McNair or Baker Mayfield is statistically improbable or unlikely, and you need to prepare yourself that that's a too high of a bar. It's not that he can't clear it. It's not that he's not going to be better than that. I'm saying statistically it's improbable.
And I want to say this for the record. I feel like Steve McNair is one of those people who, if you were not actively watching those games while they were happening, you probably think he was not as good as he was. Like the whole appeal of Steve McNair was you had to watch it to see. Yeah. If you just look back at the stats of his MVP season, those are unimpressive. That would get you not to the Pro Bowl these days. And it's not like he was making up for it with all these rushing touchdowns. He didn't really run that much at that point in his career. The impressive part of it was you watched it and it was like, oh, wow. Yeah, no, he's controlling this game. So for Cam Ward to be great, he's going to need to throw for 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns and all those things you guys were talking about the other day. Steve McNair never did any of that. So he will very literally have to be better than Steve McNair was. because Steve McNair played quarterback in a very different era of the position.
And I think Titans fans hope for a very different type of organization. I think the hope is that Brinker, Borgonzi, Callahan is a true signaling of change. When they hired him, it was he who passes ball best wins game. And that was a totally new philosophy from the head coach for the Titans, who was what Callahan said when he was hired. How many quarterbacks go in the first round? I think Jackson Dart is available at the top of the second round. Shedeur Sanders, I think, is drafted in the first round. I assume he will be. He's one of those that I could see falling, though, on draft day. You know, the Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers thing. I could see him falling on draft day. I actually think there's a lot of I pose this to Paul. How many picks would it take for you to take Jackson Dart at 35? How many more picks would you need? Is it 4 starting players that are worth taking Dart instead of Ward? I think that's an interesting question. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's anything likely, but I do think it's worth thinking about.
I wouldn't do it, but
just Cam and Shedeur in the first round, huh?
I would say I am. If you ask me, is it more likely for there to be 1 or for there to be 3? I would say 3 is more likely than 1.
Okay.
But I'm not feeling great about that.
I hear you. Okay. The most anti-Cam Ward. I'm not anti-Cam Ward guy returns. McNair had a stronger arm and ran like a running back. Cam isn't nearly as tough, which is fine, but I don't see the comparisons. I don't know if the arm is stronger. I think the arms are pretty even, actually.
Yeah, I'll give you runs like a running back. I don't know if I'll give you a stronger arm.
I agree. I think McNair was a burlier, more physical, more demanding physical presence, and Cam Ward is he's got more of a tight release, true passer. And funny thing about quarterbacks in the NFL, their number one job, throwing the football. It's funny. It's a funny thing. Coach Will says, I'm only a Titans fan because of Steve's ability to get it done with special. I agree. And to your point, it's hard to watch. It's hard to pick it up unless you watched.
Yeah, if your age does not start with the number 3 or bigger, you probably do not have a frame of reference of what made Steve McNair great.
All right, quickly, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Make sure you buy some tickets for the draft party coming up on the 24th and the 26th. 2 great events. We got to get to our main topic, which we've already avoided already. I know you talked to Taylor Zarzer. We've efforted to have him on our media show with myself and Steve Cavendish on Lamestream Sports. We're going to have him on pretty soon, so we'll talk to him. You've already had a chance to talk to him. Listen to him on pregame for golf this weekend. I believe it's 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Central tomorrow on Friday, and then 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Central Time on Saturday and Sunday on Sirius XM. You can listen to him do pregame for the Masters, get a sense for his work. I can't imagine you haven't watched him on Sirius on SEC Network on like games 4 or 5 each Saturday. He's been doing that a long time. He's very, very good at golf. He just has to make sure, we talked about this on Monday. You can't try to replicate Mike Keith. You got to be authentically yourself. And as long as you do that, the fans need to give him a chance because I think he's very talented. I think he works really hard. He's very good at golf, but you got to be authentically yourself and not try to replicate Mike Keith, which, I don't think he's going to try to do. So that's all. Make sure you read the story. Got anything from your takeaway from your conversation with Taylor?
No, very fascinated that he's going to continue calling golf. I think that's very interesting that he's going to keep his moonlighting job.
I've known him for a very long time. Golf is his favorite sport.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm surprised by it. I just find it fascinating that it's going to happen. Based on the way that he talks about wanting to build a chemistry with Coach Mack, I think it's going to be a very fun booth. I think that the two of them are going to enjoy each other.
Yeah, Mac is good. Mac's great. Okay, let's dive into the actual headline here on the show, which is, can the Tennessee Titans actually compete for anything in 2025? Sort of what has to happen, what players must develop, who's actually penciled in to make that progress in our minds on this team, because as I said, we're not going to talk about Cam Ward today, and then we did it for 30 minutes. That's my fault. All right, number one, I want you to give me this doesn't have to specifically be a player. Let me give you an example. Things that are going to make progress that I feel comfortable saying, I'm pretty sure they're going to make progress this year, right? There are a lot of players on this list, so we'll get to them. But I've got something else kind of trying to be as creative as possible here. For example, linebackers' athleticism is something I've written down.
Yeah.
The linebackers' athleticism will be significantly better. I don't know who the starting 2 and who the 2 deep is going to be, but if Cedric Gray, James Williams are in that mix with Cody Barton, they are going to be more athletic. They're going to be rangier and faster and more athletic. So that's something I feel comfortable saying is going to make progress. I think special teams has to make progress. mostly because of the coaching decision with Fossil. But I think they're gonna invest in bottom of the roster players that are going to be better at their jobs on special teams, and special teams is going to progress. Do those two things make sense to you? Do you agree with them?
I would put them in the other order, but yes, I would say special teams is the number one candidate to take a pretty significant leap forward. I am not convinced yet that the linebackers will take a leap forward athletically or otherwise, because I want to see who plays the position first. But I would say those are two very connectable answers. Yes.
So here's what I said about linebackers. I think progress for sure. Linebackers' athleticism, ability to cover in space, ability to chase down plays on the back end, maybe blitz the passer. What I think is going to regress is going to be their mistakes. There's going to be more mistakes from the linebackers. So this is sort of an example of where I think a position group is actually going to go one way.
That's what you're hearing. Hello, commenter. This is what you're hearing. This is the baby goat.
Do I hear a small child? If you had a small child or a baby goat, it would be absolutely hilarious, just off camera. But that's an example. I think the linebacking core is a really critical thing, a critical position area of need and importance. And I think they will be more athletic. They're going to be faster. They're going to be more aggressive. Do I think they're going to be wiser and more experienced and put in the right positions? Are they going to make more mistakes? Are they going to be more productive? I don't know about any of that yet.
Yeah. All I'm saying is I also don't know about the athleticism because I haven't seen who's going to be playing the position yet. I agree on your point that it is likely that it will happen. I want to see the depth chart.
I think if you look at the law the law firm of Gifford and Gibbons and Campbell, I think you're getting more athletic.
Probably.
Just my hunch. Okay, let me ask you about specific players. Sure. What players do you feel very comfortable with making progress that are going to be better this year, that you are absolutely penciling in as improving on the Madden rating scale or whatever?
The boring answer to start, J.C. Latham, I think will be better. I don't think it's because of the move to right tackle. I think it is because of the move to being a year older and having another year experience in the NFL. I think that J.C. Latham last year was a pretty clear rookie wall type guy. I remember 9-10 weeks into the season, we were on this show talking about, we haven't had to talk about J.C. Latham all season. He's been as clean as they come. And then the last 6-7 games of the year, he started to struggle. And some of that was competition related. Some of it was you're playing Will Anderson twice. You're playing Trey Hendrickson. Like, some of those guys just gave him fits. And that happens. Those are really good football players. But I do think that as he gets this full year of NFL training, we talk all the time about, before your rookie year, you spend 4 months training to be a track athlete, not be a football player. Now your first full year, you get to be a football player the whole time. I don't know if that was necessarily, sorry, I'm really distracted by that comment. Okay, Z Dean, sure.
I haven't seen season 2. Don't tell me what that means.
It says I can see Nick working in the Severance goat room as an innie. But yeah,
JC Latham. Do the innies and the outies know each other? Have we gotten to know? I haven't seen season 2. Don't spoil it.
Then how can I answer that question?
Delicately, carefully,
potentially. I think JC Latham's going to take a leap. I think that he is the first answer to cross off the board. If we're doing this draft style, he's my first pick. Who do you got second?
Latham and Skoronski are my first pick as a combo platter. I think the two of them are going to take a major step forward. And honestly, the question to what will help the team become a competitive football team fastest is finally, after trying for years, actually fixing the offensive line, to which a big part is Latham and Skoronski developing into the pieces that they are. Yeah. Some of it is going to be Cushenberry being healthy, and the other part is the investment actually being the right investment for the first freaking time in years, instead of signing a bunch of below replacement level tackles off the free agent scrap heap. Yeah. And it's just they can't continually doing the same thing and expect a different result. This is at least something different. Almost $100 million in two guys who at least know how to be professionals. And if Moore and Zeitler and Latham and Skoronski, the number one question for this team that helps Cam Ward or whoever's playing quarterback makes them better is to finally actually have fixed the offensive line. Mm-hmm. And I've said it too many times and put my hand back on the burner and been wrong. Well, they look better in practice. I've said it to you in camp. Well, they look better in practice. Oh, this year they're all same five every week. That's got to be good, right? Never works. It's never worked. So it's got to work this time. But I do think that Latham and Skoronski take major steps forward. I think Skoronski in particular has a chance to be very good. And I think Latham is going to be a mauler by the end of his career. So I think he's going to get there this year. That's the other one. I think L'Jarius Sneed is a better, more productive member of the team based specifically on availability. No?
I agree.
Is he a top pick in your draft here?
I think that you guys have heard me say this before. The level of year-to-year progression at cornerback is significantly higher than any other position on the field. You can be a superstar one year and an absolute nobody the next year, and then a superstar again the year after. If we're putting it in baseball terms, cornerback is the most bippable position on the field. Like, if you get beat for one big play, it's going to be the thing that carries with you the entire season. Like, your passer rating against or your PFF grade or whatever it is going to be skewed by one long touchdown. And it's going to happen. And two of them, you have a crud year. You're just a terrible player if you give up two long plays. Sneed, he got hurt. He wasn't playing well before he got hurt. I think he's probably closer to what he was in 22 than 23 or 24. But in 22, he was a really good corner. So
pretty good. Pretty good player. BAPIP, by the way, is batting average on balls in play.
Yes.
It's a really, really nerdy baseball metric for sure.
No, it's not.
But it essentially
was nerdy in 2002.
It is essentially how lucky were you when you hit the ball. Is basically what it is. So BAPIPable is now an adjective we've added to the phraseology. I think both to carry on with corners here. I think Brownlee and McCreary. I'm curious what you think about McCreary. Everyone assumes Brownlee's going to take a step, which he should. Where are you at on McCreary? Because I think he's actually going to be better this year.
I think that McCreary very easily could be a guy who just never gets noticed for 10 years and was always a good pro, and that'd be good for him.
I agree.
Like, he was not bad last year. He can be better, but the best case scenario for the Tennessee Titans is that nobody outside of the state of Tennessee ever mentions Roger McCreary. Like, he is a guy who, by the way his position is played, should be a fan favorite that if you ask somebody in Denver or Seattle or Philadelphia, hey, what do you think about Roger McCreary?
Never heard of
like, I don't know, man. Who's that? Did he play at Alabama? Like, I want him to be that kind of guy.
You shipped Awuzie out of town and paid him almost his entire salary because you believe in Brownlee, Sneed, and McCreary.
Yeah.
That's it. So I think I think you have to bank on them being better and more productive next year. Those two younger guys making progress, Sneed being available. So I think all of that. I'll ask you about safety here in a second, but the other one I've got is T'Vondre Sweat. I think if Jeffrey Simmons, and this is also another answer to the question, how do the Tennessee Titans compete? If T'Vondre Sweat takes a sophomore leap, as expected, and Jeffrey Simmons plays the whole season on the Titans, at his Simmons level, that could be a truly dominating interior force. And if that is a truly dominating interior force where they command 3 or 4 blockers every play, where they pressure the pocket on passing downs, where they gobble up blockers in the running game, if they are truly a dominant tandem, that could change the way the defense plays the game the entire season. And both lines of scrimmage are the first two answers for how this team gets back to being good quickly. Not quarterback, offensive line, and defensive line.
Big boys matter. Also, did somebody in the comments just say I looked like a 13-year-old Shia LaBeouf?
Is that a compliment?
I don't know.
I didn't see that.
That's Even Stevens. Lewis Stevens is the character from Even Stevens. Keep him coming. Goat guy from Severance.
Goat guy.
Teenage Shia LaBeouf. Just keep insulting me.
I do not get the Lewis. I don't know Lewis Stevens the character, so I don't know. Yeah. So I didn't know that
I
was
definitely didn't just Google it to remind myself while this was happening. Yeah, no, I think the thing about Sweat is we have to figure out, is he a guy who is going to be the run stopper extraordinaire without developing that next gear? And is that going to be enough? Or does he have to develop the pass rush gear in order to match his value? I don't necessarily know if he has to be a pass rusher to have the value you're saying. But in order for the Titans to truly have the best defensive interior in the NFL, as people have said could be possible if Sweat takes that step, you kind of want him to be a guy who is up there in that 4 to 6 sacks a year range. But I don't know. Maybe if he's just a good nose tackle who takes the double teams so Jeff can do his thing, maybe that is good enough.
I think that's the key, is the threat of the sack is more important than the actual sack. So I agree, like 3 to 4 sacks, like Coach Will says, I think would be perfectly acceptable. The key is, if you are in 3rd and 8, is he able to be on the field? Which I think last year he showed us he's totally capable. So that's the first question: availability on critical downs and your stamina, which he answered those questions last year. Number 2 is just, if you leave him single covered with a guard, do you have a chance of keeping your pocket stable, or do you assume that you're probably going to be pushed one way or the other because Sweat's just going to win one-on-one most times? It doesn't mean he's getting to the quarterback. It just means, is he the threat? And I think he can be. I don't think he needs to be 5, 6, 7 sacks. I think he just needs to be the threat. And as long as you have to leave a back or a tight end or chip or help out on a guard or a center, I think that's all that matters. I think that's all that matters with Sweat.
You wanna play me into Geek Corner real quick?
I need a jingle. Do Geek Corner.
Okay. So before you even pitched this as the idea for a show, I was doing some research the other day to something that didn't really lead anywhere story-wise, but I was looking at every single
all my best pitches.
I was looking at every team since the turn of the century that has had the number 1 pick, used the number 1 pick, and looked at what they did in the off season leading up to the year, to look at how much money did they spend, compared to the rest of the league, what did they spend it on, and how many players did they add through free agency, through trades, etc., that actually ended up starting for that team. And look, trivia, if you guys want to try and figure it out in the comments, I believe there are 4 teams since the turn of the century that had the number 1 pick, used the number 1 pick, and then went on to make the playoffs that year. It is not super common. Interestingly, the only team that has led the NFL in free agency spending a year they had the number 1 pick did end up going on to the playoffs. So, like, this idea of you have to be austere, you have to build with the draft, it doesn't always work that way. I believe the Titans are 8th in free agency spending this offseason, mostly because of the Dan Moore contract.
I would love to know the ratios comparison between the number of teams that were the number 1 spending team making the playoffs versus the number 1 pick making the playoffs. Because you said it was 5 since 2000, right?
It's 4 or 5. I can't remember. I've given you guys enough time to think. It was the 2008 Miami Dolphins made it after picking Jake Long. Yeah. The 2012 Colts made it with Andrew Luck.
Yep.
The 2013 Chiefs with Eric Fisher. And then the 2022 Jaguars with Trayvon Walker. And that was the team. The Jaguars led the NFL in free agency spending that year. They had Trevor Lawrence heading into year 2. They had just hired Doug Peterson.
Yeah.
That team turned it around great. But then all of those free agency contracts looked like albatrosses by year 2 and 3. So it was very much a 1-year.
Luck and Lawrence with like 2 of the greatest comebacks in like.
Yes.
Or was it Herbert that made the comeback? Who made the comeback in that playoff game?
Lawrence did.
Yeah, so Lawrence and Luck both had. Wasn't that the Chiefs playoff game 2012 where the Colts had the 30-point comeback or whatever?
That might have been.
Maybe
14.
I'm wrong on that.
That might have been 14. It might have been 12. But also the the Jaguars did make the playoffs in Lawrence's second year. That was the year they picked Trayvon Walker.
No, I know. And my question is, what do you have any idea on the free agents? Is it like about the same? 5 out of 25 have made the playoffs?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you, looking at, I found free agent spending data back to like 2010 or so.
Okay. All right.
I don't think that any team with the number 1 pick has signed more than 7 free agents or trade, like veteran ads, that went on to be regular starters for that team that year. Like this idea of completely rebuilding through free agency. The Titans I think are at 5 right now. We can argue on, because I want to talk about
you talking special teams, like
no, I'm talking offense and defense. So if we are, and this all leads to the can they compete for a playoff spot? Who must develop? I think if we're talking about pure development, you do have to say how much of an upgrade is Dan Moore over the replacement level tackle they were playing? How much of an upgrade is Draymond Jones over Harold Landry, et cetera? Like you have to look at those things. 5 players, you can say reasonably new starters added. You have Dan Moore, Kevin Zeitler, Draymond Jones, Cody Barton, and Xavier Woods. We could argue Van Jefferson. I don't think that he's going to end up being a starter.
We shall not argue that.
So those are the 5 which players must develop candidates who are the most important right now, because that is the you got rid of Dylan Radins for Kevin Zeitler.
I think it's the O-line.
Yeah. So I think when you talk about those things, the Titans are essentially on par with what league convention is, which is if you have the number 1 pick, you're going to be top 10 in spending, and you are going to draft or sign 5 to 7 veterans and then build through the draft. That said, the question, can they make the playoffs? Very rare that it happens. Again, Andrew Luck being the only time that it happened because you drafted a great quarterback. Like it's pretty rare to go worst to first in that way.
So the obvious answers to me are the names we've already talked about. The obvious answers to how the team competes are, I think, the offensive and defensive lines, and Cam Ward is good at quarterback. Those are obvious answers. If you want the real answer, though, which is quality depth throughout the roster, it is about this next group of names that I want to throw at you, which is the guys that I'm going to call them last chance you here, but not all of them fall into that category. I'm kind of using it as a loose catch-all, but it's a bunch of names that I don't have faith are going to take major steps forward. But if they do, and a number of them do, then all of a sudden your roster goes from some top-heavy talent at certain key positions to a quality middle-of-the-pack roster that could compete at a higher level. For example, I think Tony Pollard is fine. I think Calvin Ridley is fine. I think the rest of the supporting cast around the quarterback is a major question. Is this Traylon Burke's last chance? Probably. I don't know what to think of Tajay Spears. I think he can be better, but I think he's also hurt all the time. I think he's a decent player. I don't know what he's going to be in this particular season. I think it's important to find out. That's why they're talking about drafting a running back late. I think Chig and Wiley are in there. I don't know where they're at with this roster. Like the coach, Brian Callahan, doesn't use tight ends a lot. And I think Chig is what he is. I think Wiley might be what he is. It's why we think there's an interest in the tight end in the draft. And I don't know how many more chances either of those two guys have to prove that they are bona fide starting offensive weapons for this team. I think one of them will be. I think one of them will develop into something better than they have been. But I think you have to look at that group of players, the number 2s, I'm going to call them, on the offense around Cam Ward or whoever's playing quarterback, and it feels like this is their last chance. And I don't have faith in those guys turning into something different, if that makes sense. I think Bryce Oliver could step up and progress and become a nicer piece. I think but there's a reason they are, quote, going to be aggressive at getting a receiver in the draft, because I think you're looking at a bunch of players who are just sort of guys. And I don't know if any of them are going to progress into something special this year.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, we're talking about people with very limited track records and asking, are they going to be more than they are? There is a difference between the jump in year 1 to year 2 versus year 2 to 3 versus year 3 to 4 with some of these guys. Once you've played 2 years in the league, that jump usually comes from changing scenery. It does not come from just magically getting better. There are some players that do it, but I think that in the case of your Chig or Wiley or Spears, it's a very different uphill battle than Bryce Oliver. Bryce Oliver, incredibly low expectations as an undrafted pick, didn't play much, will now have more exposure if he gets these reps. But also, I was reading something the other day that was written about the Titans by somebody who is not around the Titans often. And their perception of Bryce Oliver pretty much boils down to, I thought that was some guy in witness protection's fake name. Like, the value that we as people who watch the Titans every day put on Bryce Oliver does not match the general consensus of, if the Titans trot him out as their number 3 week 1, people are going to laugh.
I was purely looking at player was worth X. He's now worth X plus something this year.
Totally agree.
And there's no guarantee that Treylon Burks, Chig, Josh Wiley, Tajay Spears, or any of these other guys, Van Jefferson, are going to be worth more this year than last year. They might not.
Agree with the point.
And so there's different. Like, here's another one that I find really interesting that's not getting a lot of talk, because I'm a big fan of Amani Hooker. I just think as a football player, when healthy on the field, I think he's a really solid football player. Hasn't been healthy. Has missed some time. He's been around long enough to be either be a star or be a guy. And I'm not sure which direction he's going right now. I really don't. I think he's good enough that if he's healthy, he's a really solid, positive, contributing member on the back end of this defense who can be a veteran presence and a leader. I don't know what to make of where he's going to be this year. I don't.
Yeah, I do think that it's very interesting. If you look at the per game and per play stats, I think Amani Hooker is a very good player. I think there is an argument to be made that he is a top 10 number 2 safety in the NFL. That said, the Titans over the last 4 years have been better when he's been hurt. Like, the Titans win more games when he's not on the field. And I can't reconcile that. I think he's good. I think he's a good player.
I know, me too.
His absence does not hurt this team very much.
I tend to agree. And so the question is, do you need to have him and Xavier Woods be pretty good to be competitive? Probably. I think more importantly, you need to be healthy. That's the key. You need to be healthy. So here's the other one. I think swing tackles, this is your last chance to make camp. Yeah. MPF, Jalen Duncan, etc. I am curious about this one with Cedric Gray. If he goes through another year where doesn't make any progress or show anything, I think they're going to be quick to pull the trigger on him. I think. Just based on feelings and vibes.
Yeah.
I think they're almost more invested in developing James Williams than they are Cedric Gray, I think.
And let's not just throw Otis Reese out of the conversation here. They kept him for a reason. There were a lot of linebackers they did not keep this year. Gifford's elsewhere and Gibbons is elsewhere, and one other, obviously, other than Kenneth Murray. Who else left? There's so many linebackers. Everybody left.
They're all the same person, in fact. No one's ever seen them on the field at the same time. No, I like Otis Reese. I always have liked Otis Reese. On that, again, on the Bryce Oliver level of expectation. Yeah. Like, that's why I've liked him. I just am curious what the path and the trajectory for Cedric Gray is going to be. Like, if he comes in and shows everybody why he was a 3rd pick and is very athletic, very fast, and can play next to Barton, you might have an answer there. Like, but we've got nothing. And I don't think, I'm curious how patient they're going to be with him, is my question. At a position that's very replaceable, that's important, but replaceable, I'm curious how patient they are with Cedric Gray. That's all.
Yeah. And you guys heard me rant about tight ends last week. I will spare you my rant about inside linebacker, but I feel essentially the same way. It is a luxury item. You talk about it if your team's good. If your team's not good, I don't care. Get good and then fix inside linebacker.
I think there is a chance that Draymond Jones is a nice piece, that he's a serviceable player at his position that could be better than the money they spent on him. Mm-hmm. I think Arden Key is taking a step back based on age and just general. I know he had a really nice stretch at the end of last season. I don't see, if you do not use your 1st round pick on a pass rusher and get an edge 1, I do not see how the pass rush is better. I just don't. The other one that really floats, that's really stuck with me last night while I was preparing for this, is Tony Pollard. I think he's a really good player, much like Amani Hooker. I think he's a very productive player when on the field. He's been hurt a lot. He's not a big player. The offensive line hopefully is better. Spears has been banged up. I don't know what to think. Is it possible that Tony Pollard takes a step back in production? Yeah. Is it possible he replicates what he did last year? Absolutely. I don't know what to think of Pollard.
Yes, you have outlined most of the options possible for what can happen. I think
what do you think is going to happen?
I think that if Tajay Spears takes a step forward, Tony Pollard's going to be really good. But if Tony Pollard has to be a 70 to 80% of the Hall type of running back, he's going to regress. I do not see him being an every down back at this phase in his career. And that is not a slight against him. Most running backs shouldn't touch the ball 80 to 90% of the team's carries.
Yep.
But if Tajay Spears can't be relied upon to carry the ball between the tackles, it's going to be very tough on Tony Pollard.
This is why you're the wordsmith. You know what would help Tony Pollard between the tackles? Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez, Jarquez Hunter, LaKeith Allen, all would help him between the tackles.
Totally agree.
I think a 6th or 7th round pick is coming for a running back. Any other special teams? I know you kind of alluded to that. You think they're making progress. Is there any other players piece? Obviously, we avoided, we're not talking coaching staff here necessarily, and we're not talking quarterback here, but I'm just curious if there's anybody else we missed here that you want to touch on.
I mean, if we want to talk like subjective traits, kind of like you talked about with linebacker athleticism, I think that second half mentality is going to be something that takes a step forward. I think that this was a team that, especially early in the season, did a bad job of thinking it was capable of pulling out the win. And I don't know how much of that was purely the desperation coming off of Levis week 2 and beyond of not trying to replicate that Bears game versus it was a systemic thing from coaches on down. But I do think that that is in year 2 of this regime, the way they handle the second half has to develop. And I believe that it will, but that's really like the turnovers last year and the penalties and the sacks and all that stuff. That was the main reason they struggled, but let's not discount just how bad this team was late in games.
Well, in second half, and I'm going to further it and call it finishing 2 and 6 last year in 1-score games.
Yeah.
Generally, that's a 50-50 proposition over time. You play 2 or 3 years, you're going to be about 500 on 1-score games. They could not finish games last year. And I think experience from the head coach, talent improvement along both lines of scrimmage, and I think you set your better second half game plan, better second half focus, better second half stuff like they had in the first halves last year. You have to be better at closing games. And I think if you do have Cam Ward, one of the things you need to be most excited about with Cam Ward is probably that fourth quarter thing. That the reason you draft him, the reason you take him at 1 overall is not because he's perfectly accurate and perfect processor and a perfect size with a perfect arm and a perfect throwing motion. You take him because he's a dog.
Yeah.
And you take him because in the fourth quarter, he is going to do something special to help your team win. And maybe that's the Mac comparison that matters the most.
Yeah. And before we finish this up, just to clean up something I've seen mentioned in the comments by a couple of different people today, leadership and belief are really different things. So when you guys are talking about, one of the issues last year was a lack of leadership, or Cam Ward's going to come in and be a leader in a way that Will Levis was not. I do not think that Will Levis struggled to be a leader. I think that the traits of leadership are entirely contingent on success. You can have all of the leadership traits, but if you're not producing, people aren't going to want to follow you. So I don't think that Cam Ward's going to come in and be a leader, and that's what's going to elevate people. I think that if Cam Ward comes in and elevates,
he makes
those leadership traits are going to bring people with him.
Yeah, he makes the play. Yeah.
So I don't think that I think people tend to put this backwards of, the team struggled because Levis wasn't a leader. I think it was Levis struggled to establish himself as a leader because he was struggling on the field.
Yeah,
no matter how much you call leadership traits the most important thing, there's a reason that the team captain is never the third string linebacker who plays on the interior punt return. Right. The captain is usually the person that people want to be like, that people strive to be like. And there's a reason. If you go back to 23, when Levis came in and you hear all these people on the sideline energized and Jeff saying that's our quarterback and we have something new and all this stuff, that looked like leadership because it was working.
Yep.
And that's what I think is
two
missing.
times. It worked 2 times.
Yeah.
It worked against Atlanta. It worked against Miami. And then last year it worked
4 or 5 times.
A couple times, yeah. All right, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Boys Barbecue. The draft party tickets are linked in the show notes. They'll be all over the socials soon. There's going to be a really fun party on Thursday night, just a chill watch party, live stream, all you can eat, all you can drink at the Track One building at Wedgwood, Houston, the Sinkers headquarters, HQ. And then, of course, on Saturday, we're going to have the same event, even bigger, private Q&A with all the 440 personalities. You got, hopefully, Stoney's going to be there. We'll see. JT's going to be there. Steve Cavendish is going to be there. Nick Suss is going to be there. Paul Kaharski is going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're going to have a big old plan. And we might have some other special guests showing up on Saturday night as well. Otherwise, thank you guys for being so active in the comments. Always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Go watch some golf this weekend, Nick, okay? Seriously, it's awesome. It's relaxing. It's gorgeous.
I got stuff.
Beautiful.
I got stuff, Braden.
You don't have stuff. You have a cat. You have a cat.
I got stuff.
That's what you have. You have a cat. I have my 7-year-old's birthday today. Happy birthday to my daughter who doesn't care at all about Titans content. For Nick, I am Braden. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. We will talk to you guys next time.